My best day using is still worse than my worst day sober.
Yeah.
And when I heard that, I was like, fuck
Shut
you.
the fuck
because
up.
I had there were some days at the beginning that using was like kind of fun. Mostly, but now that I really look at it, it wasn't fun. It was just like an escape.
Yeah.
So like, it was like the only time that I ever felt good. So like, of course, I thought it was fun. But now I'm like, holy shit, that's actually true. Mm-hmm. Which, like, I don't know that I would ever repeat that to somebody because they will probably want to punch me in the face like I used to when I heard people say that. But it's like,
I haven't fallen into saying too many of the cliches yet.
No, I can't because people just aren't in a position to hear. Like they didn't really start making sense to me until like 2 or 3 years in.
Until you start like experiencing things and life starts to get a little bigger and fuller.
And I didn't grow up in sobriety in AA. Mostly because of MAT. So like I got an MAT on and off for years before it worked, right? And so 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the AA community was a lot less welcoming of MAT and even like medication. Like I've heard people say that like somebody's on Lamictal so they're not sober or something like 15
There's
years ago.
There's this huge debate with it.
And I basically think that I'm certainly not God and I have no right to judge anyone's recovery or sobriety. And that if the newcomer is the most important person in the room, then who am I to shun the newcomer or judge the newcomer? So like however anybody wants to get sober, they should be able to get sober. Like my favorite cliche, and I do say this a lot, is you're in recovery when you say so. And so I stayed away from the rooms for a long time because I got sober on methadone. And then as time has passed and I've met people at conferences that really like walk the walk, they don't preach, they don't quote the literature, they don't preach the cliches, but you can tell when they walk by that they have this like inner peace and serenity and you're like, oh,
I want
shit, that's the people I want to be near. Well, I looked around, all those people were in the program. Every single one, without fail, was in those morning meetings and was, and I could literally name like 10 of them off the top of my head that they would walk by and I was like, those are the people that I want to align myself with in recovery and professionally. All of them were in the room. So I started going more and more. And as I'm almost 5 years sober, the sayings and the program makes a lot more sense to me than it ever did early on. It just didn't make sense to me early on because I got too bogged down in the details. But you know what I can get behind? Like, be a nice person. Don't judge others. Admit when you're wrong. Like, take accountability. Help people. Like, I can get behind that. And at its core, that's really what 12-step is all about. That's kind of I'm really a multiple pathways person, but like I said, as time has progressed, I've really gravitated more, and I am finally starting to come down off MAT, as I kind of mentioned. So I got sober with the Big Bad Wolf methadone.
Even when I was in California, like MAT and like people that I know are in the program just kind of talk shit about it. So
and people like just don't talk about it, right? They don't talk about it. And I've heard recently somebody that I care deeply about who really needs to be on mood stabilizers and antidepressants was told recently that he's not sober and needs to get off that. And that's like not to me, like that's not what the program is. Like that's not the program. The program is helping other people and self-improvement and lifting people up. And, you know, it's certain people that don't really understand the program very well, kind of demonizing the literature. But so I stayed away for, like I said, for a long time. And then as I have gone through kind of this change and gotten more ingrained in the recovery community, I've started to realize, like, what is methadone doing for my life now that I'm, coming up on 5 years? Like, do I need to still be on this? And you may or may not know about this. I just had all my teeth redone, like ripped out of my head, like had no teeth had no teeth.
This is amazing. Yeah.
No teeth.
And I was looking at you yesterday. I was like, wow, she has amazing teeth.
Oh, girl. They're every single one is fake. So my daughter stuck her finger in my mouth the other day and goes, "Mommy, your teeth are weird." And I was like, yeah, that's what happens when you don't brush your teeth. I mean, it's a little more complicated than that,
Yeah,
but I
for
wasn't
sure.
going to choose that moment to tell my 4-year-old about.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, that's what happens when you don't brush your teeth, is your teeth get weird like that. And then I pulled up my gum because the gap between my gum and my
Do it
gum
right now,
line
do it
hasn't
right
come down. So I told you I have like no secrets. I don't care at all. So you can see the gap really bad between my my mouth and my gum, and so I had to get it all done recently because everyone looked like I had good teeth, so no one knew I was missing one, but the back was like all decayed, black, like abscesses. I was in pain all the time. I had fevers from it, like really impacting my health. And there's a major correlation between your gums and your heart. And like, so when I realized how much this was impacting me, I was at NATAP conference in Denver, and I got so sick, and Robbie looked at me and said, I don't think they're going to let you on a plane. Like, you are like that bad.
Yeah.
So I went home and I pushed up my implants. Robbie wanted me to skip West Coast. I felt strongly about attending that conference, so I did it right after West Coast. And 2 days later, I felt better. Like, I literally felt better physiologically. So now I'm like, okay, if this is what this is doing to my teeth, what's it doing to my bones? Mm-hmm. What's it doing to my heart? And then so the next time I went, I have take-homes from the clinic, so I went to go get take-homes the next time, and I had a letter that was waiting for me with my take-home bottles that basically said I needed to get my heart checked again because you have to do it every 2 years.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, thank you, universe. I get it. Like, this is now the time. And there was something else that happened too, and I was like, holy shit, like the universe is telling me like this is the time to get off. So I thought about how do I do this, and I do it the way that people get off an alcohol, which is I have a sponsor lined up, and I'm going to start going to meetings again really regularly, and I'm going to work the steps, and I'm going to do some monitoring when I get under a certain level. I'm going very slowly, and when I get to 100, I'm going to start doing some testing and some monitoring and have it sent to like my husband and I don't know, Jordana.
So you have
Robbie
like a process.
There's a plan. There's a really strong plan in place because, and when I got my teeth done, I had a sober companion, which was like bringing a gun to a knife fight. I mean, it was like totally ridiculous. I didn't need to, but I'm sure glad I did.
Yeah.
Because for me, like nothing is worth risking kind of like where I am, right? We were talking about this before, that there's been opportunities that have been opened up to me and to you as well that like are entirely because of recovery.
100%. And recovery also, I want to emphasize, looks different for everybody. Because you also mentioned you couldn't get sober without
I went
getting
to
on
9
MAT.
programs.
Yeah.
Like I went to nine residential programs. So that doesn't even count IOP, doesn't count PHP, doesn't count anything else I did. Like the spa that my parents sent me to like get me off cocaine. Like I don't even
A spa?
We're not even going to talk about that one. But yeah, so I spent to like the Golden Door Day Spa for like 2 weeks to like with a bunch of like celebrities to get massages and like, I mean, it was lovely, but there was no treatment. It was like hiking through the woods and like doing yoga at my leisure. Like it was delightful. I would love to do it now, but it was absolutely ludicrous.
Well,
but they didn't know what
that.
to do. They didn't know what to do. So it was 17 years old. They were desperate. I tried everything and I was pregnant and I was going to lose my child to DCF custody because I was now 6 months in and still actively using, but I was going to all my obstetrician appointments, high-risk obstetrician appointments. I was going to addiction psychiatry. I was telling everybody everything. There was no like shadiness. I was like doing urines. Like I wasn't like bringing in fake. Like I was like being really honest about everything and like desperate to get sober. And Dr. Green, who I'd been seeing for a while and really, really trusted, was like, you have one more shot at this and you're not going to like it, but you need to go on methadone. It's like your only option given where you are at this stage. Like no residential program was going to take me because I was pregnant and I was on and off Suboxone and I was high risk because of my age. I'm 39, so I was 34 then, which is considered like a little older. So that was my option. And at first I was like, absolutely not. And he's like, okay, then you're going to lose your kid. Like, this is your choice. I mean, he was more delicate
and then
than that.
Also explain the process of methadone, just for people who may not know. And like what it is and what you know about it.
It's another medication-assisted treatment. So generally in that bubble or under that umbrella, there's Vivitrol.
I did Vivitrol for a few months.
Did it work?
I guess, yeah. I didn't. Yeah,
Did
I would say so. No.
Then it worked. Okay. There you go.
Okay.
And I think Vivitrol is probably something that I'm going to use for a little while when I'm off methadone, just because methadone is, and I'll talk about this, but is an opioid replacement. I mean, it's basically like it's an opioid, a very long-acting opioid, so you're not getting high on it, but it's an opioid. So Suboxone is kind of the intermediate one that most commonly used for people that have trouble maintaining sobriety. That has typically, if you're using Suboxone versus Subutex, buprenorphine, which is a long-acting opioid, as well as a blocker in it. So you're not getting high on it. Very long-acting, so you're not getting the, what people like about opioids and heroin is the zip of it.
The extremes.
Yeah. That's why people shut up. It's very punchy. It's very strong acting, like very quick acting. Methadone is commonly referred to as liquid handcuffs, legal. I don't care what it's called. All I know is that it saved my life. Now, it has a kind of a nasty reputation because for many people, it's a last resort. So it's a pretty disadvantaged population that you typically see at those clinics. And not everybody on it wants to get sober. So some people are using it to mitigate withdrawal symptoms, or they may be unhoused and they may not, it basically makes it so that you don't get withdrawal. For if you take it every day, you're not going to get withdrawal that day if you can't get it or whatever. So it's a harm reduction medicine. And for people like me who want to get sober and have tried everything, it gave me my life back. I mean, literally, I got to the right dose, which we'll talk about that too, because that was a journey. But when I got to the right dose, it was like my brain shut off, and I never wanted to use again. I don't even know how to describe it. I had this. It's like having this thing tapping on your shoulder all the time. Get high, get high, get high. You're miserable. You suck. Your life's terrible. I can give you an escape. I can make you comfortable. I can fix this. And all of a sudden, that voice is gone. I don't even know how else to describe it. And then I still had to deal with like all the consequences of everything that happened. But it shut off that. It basically filled up my opioid receptors and shut off that voice. So typically, it's done at clinics that are specifically designed. They have specific licensure for this. It is often a liquid. They have loosened up regulations quite a bit recently on take-homes, which is good because it tends to be a disadvantaged population, and so getting there can be really, really difficult for people.
Yeah, typically you have to go to a clinic and get your
every
dose.
Day for a long time. Now they're starting to make it so you can get take-homes a little faster.
Mm-hmm.
If you're having clean urines, you're doing everything you're supposed to be doing. You're doing your weekly group. For me, that's what they requested of me. Doing a weekly group, doing a weekly therapy there, and I actually love my counselor. My counselor is like massively knowledgeable and has been doing this forever and like really gets it. I got really lucky. And you have to go every single day for a long time. And so for the first 2 years, I had to drive there every single day at 6 a.m, every single day. I went early because I wanted to not have my child awake and knowing about it. It took me a long time to earn take-homes because you used to have, I think it was like 2 months of clean urines before you got one take-home, and then 2 months before you got the next, and 2 months before you got the next. I now have 28 take-homes at a time, so I only go once every 28 days. It's a liquid. It's long, like I said, it's long-acting. If I missed one dose, I'd probably be okay. I wouldn't feel tremendous, but I'd be okay.
Yeah.
2 doses, I'd start to feel shitty because it is an opioid. Now, the biggest problem with it is it's hard to come off of.
Yes. So I feel like that's where a lot of the people in recovery who are sober hate on it, is because like, oh, you're getting off of your choice just to be dependent on another substance. I think that's like kind of what the stigma is with it.
And I get that. And I was pregnant. It's the gold standard for treating pregnant women who are not successful at other methods or are too far along in their pregnancy to be tapered off onto nothing or can't, for some whatever reason, get on Subutex. So there's a reason that it's kind of considered that. All I know is that before I went to my last residential treatment, I did 3 overdoses in like 12 hours. One of them was in a hospital parking lot. At right 10 minutes after they discharged me, I fell out of the car with a needle in my arm. I had tried it, everything. I'd completely given up. I'd lost my will to live. I was fine f***ing up my life. I love my husband dearly, but I was fine f***ing up his life. But I really didn't want, I really, 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 really didn't want to fuck up my baby's life. And so at that point, when Dr. Green suggested methadone, I gave some pushback, but I trusted him enough to say, okay, fine.
Is this something you would recommend for people as like a final resort?
You know, I think recovery is so individualized, and I can't make any blanket recommendations for anybody.
That's very true.
Because there's some people that, no, the answer is no. The answer is no. As a blanket statement, no. I think it is something that needs to be really thought out.
Yeah.
Really a last resort. I mean, I think if you're overdosing every other day and you're unhoused and you can't hold down a job and you're robbing places and you've burned all your bridges and you're trying to stabilize your life, yeah, I probably think it's a better option than what you're doing. I do. But you got to know what you're getting into and go in with eyes wide open, because it's a really big commitment and it's really not super easy to get off of. And so my plan, I mean, it's probably going to take me 2 years to get off of it.
Really?
And I'm going down 5 milligrams every couple weeks. I haven't felt that. You know, I'm on a high dose. Most people are like, whoa. I don't recommend it for everybody. I don't even recommend it for the majority of people. I think there is a small population like me who have tried everything, have not been successful, and are so close to giving up and just throwing in the towel that for people like that, yeah, I think it's a life-saving medication. But you know, I don't even feel that way about Suboxone. I mean, I hear kids going to their first treatment. You know, 20-year-old kids going to their first treatment for Roxys, which are now unfortunately all pressed typically, but snorting them, so insufflation, not shooting up, first treatment, been doing it for 4 months, and they're leaving with a script of Suboxone. I'm like, why? Like, what are you doing? But I mean, so I am like not a blanket proponent of MAT. I think it has a bad reputation because there are some negative consequences and side effects of it. But I also think that there is a small group of people that it is absolutely life-saving, and I've seen it work magic for people. Like, I mean, I couldn't hold down a job. I'd stolen from every employer that I'd ever worked for. I was going to lose my kid. I was breaking into my mom's house, stealing her jewelry, pawning all of it. I had no friends, no family, no will to live. And very quickly it gave me back a lot.
Your life seems to be pretty cool right now.
My life's great right now. Better than like all those cliches. I would have sold myself short if I'd written, down the things that I thought I wanted. Right. I mean, I never in a million years thought this would be my life. And yeah, I owe it to methadone, but I also just think methadone is seriously risky, and there's a lot of, things that kind of come along with it. But I'm also like massively a big proponent of harm reduction too. So anything we're doing to make people's lives better in the short term, like who am I to say what somebody's sobriety is? Like, just like someone's not going to tell me I'm not in recovery because I'm on methadone. I take my medication exactly as prescribed. It's prescribed by a doctor. Like,
people will say what they say.
Yeah, and usually those are people that aren't super happy with their own lives, that feel the need to be judging others. Just like I'm supportive of 12-step, and I'm supportive of shit. I know people that have gotten sober like praying it away and like going to church. Like, wouldn't be my course of action, but I know people that have done it.
Yeah, there's so many different ways to go about it.
And I think like the more ways that you combine, the more successful like you're going to be, right? Yeah. So I think what 12-step does really, really, really well, and one of the reasons that it is going to be massively incorporated in my coming down off methadone, basically everybody that I've told that I'm coming off methadone, I've very quickly been like, and I'm doing X, Y, and Z, because I don't think you can just take out something like that without adding something in that is going to kind of protect you. So I'm gravitating hugely towards AA in the aftermath of kind of starting this journey. But like, I think it does community really well. I think it does principles and values really well, which then in turn make people act in ways that make them feel good about themselves. I think the service component of it's really important. I think there's a lot that AA does really, really, really well. And like I said, being at these conferences, I've been exposed to some people that because I was sort of shunned by the AA community because of MAT. Yeah. I was like, well, I don't want anything to do with it. And thank God I met some of these people, because I would have really, really missed out on a lot of the richness of the community had I stayed in that very limited mindset. Because like there's some of the most of the best people I know in recovery are 12-step people.
Right?
Yeah.
It's something about it. There's a true power in 12-step and AA and all the different A's.
They're good people. I mean, they practice accountability. They help other people. They admit when they're wrong. Like, they don't lie. Like, they don't steal. Like, they're good people.
Yeah,
Shit.
They're actively practicing.
And there's like some peace to not being a scumbag, right? Like, I mean, to walking up and holding your head high. Like, it doesn't matter what you did before, because you don't do any of that anymore. Yeah. Like, it's one of the reasons why, like, I think I told you, like, there's not a whole lot that's off the table for me to talk about, like using pregnant, sex work, blah, blah, blah. Like, all of it. One, nobody's run away screaming yet. I don't think it's going to happen. Two, I haven't done anything anyone else hasn't done. And three, like, I'm not that person anymore. So, like, what does it matter? You know? I can hold my head high knowing that I don't live that way, that I can be honest and transparent about the things that I did and why I did them. And frankly, I don't really believe that they're my fault. It's not my way of like not taking accountability, because now if I were to start doing those things again, it absolutely would be my fault, because I know another way to live. But at the time, like, I was doing the best with what I had. And I generally think people do the best with the resources and the tools that they have. So.
It's Laisha with fthestigma. So we've recently launched a medication assistance program to help those struggling financially to afford their necessary medications. For many, these medications can mean the difference between life and death, but the cost can be overwhelming. And that's why this program is so vital. We're asking for your support to keep this program going. Your donation can help someone stay on their path of recovery, giving them a chance to live a healthier, fuller life. Please consider donating today. Even just $5 makes a difference and is greatly appreciated. Visit our website at fthestigma.com or click the link in the description below. Together, we can make a difference. So tell me a little bit more about you using pregnant. With what we've kind of talked about, you love your kids.
Love my kids.
It's adorable.
I mean, my daughter is an absolute miracle. There's zero chance I would be sober or even alive without her. She was an oops. I mean, not really an oops. Like, I mean, most people know what happens when you have sex unprotected. Like, it's not. It wasn't like I got pregnant through the Virgin Mary here.
It just wasn't a planned pregnancy.
It just wasn't planned. So, so I got pregnant. Didn't know I was pregnant. Yeah. Was actively using. My husband was actively using. I told him he couldn't drink because he got he's like the sweetest, most like loving, lovely person. But for some reason, he, like a lot of other people I know, gets like a little nasty when he drinks. So I told him he couldn't drink anymore. So he's like, well, I'm just going to start using with you. And then I'm like, great.
That's a better
I don't
solution.
have to stop. Well, I don't have to stop or look at my own behavior then. So I'm like, awesome. Like, give me your arm. Like, let's do this thing. Not one of my proudest moments. Yeah. So then we got pregnant. We didn't know. And all of a sudden I started bleeding and my stomach hurt. And we were like, this like isn't great. There's probably something wrong. So we went to the hospital. They do a test. They also do a pregnancy test, which coincidentally also requires urine. So it was kind of like a 2-in-1 there.
Yeah.
They were like, you're using Yes, I am. And you're pregnant. Okay, I didn't know that one. So we do an ultrasound. And the minute I saw that ultrasound, we left the hospital. And I was crying, but I wasn't crying because I was unhappy. I was a little scared, but I was also like really, really, really excited. Like maybe this is my chance to like finally change my life. Now you asked me about like what I would recommend about methadone. To be very clear, I would never recommend anybody get pregnant as a means to stop using.
Oh.
Whenever anyone asks me to tell my story ever, I'm always like,
I want to make.
Do you want me to tell that part of the story? Because I don't want any young women to hear.
I want to clarify that's not your intention.
That is not my intention, because I see it backfire so many times. And that's why one of the reasons we have so many kids in like DCF custody, which is like heartbreaking and so sad. I almost lost my kid to DCF. So because I didn't stop using till 6 months in. And
it was that process, and then
the methadone clinic isn't super equipped to treat pregnant, or they are now. They've gotten a lot better, but 5 years ago they weren't super equipped to treat women who were pregnant and who were using. Right, so when was what was kind of on the street, methadone doses were much lower, much stronger, requires much higher methadone doses to keep people from going into withdrawal. Right, so and pregnant women need even higher doses. So they basically said your dose is going to be capped at 120. You don't need to be higher than that. Oh, and by the way, if you want to go higher, you need to test clean and not on for 2 weeks, which is like, wait, what? Like that doesn't even make sense. Like, how am I going to get clean if my dose is inadequate? So that medical director is long gone and has been indicted for Medicaid fraud and a whole not the clinic is a completely different place now than it was 5 years ago when I started. But I even have trouble saying that because, again, I like owe my life to this place. So not the best and medical director at the time. And Dr. Green, who is my addiction psychiatrist, got together with my obstetrician and the high-risk obstetrician. And they were like, she's trying. She's going to meetings. She's showing up to every appointment. She's showing up to therapy. Like, what are we going to do? Her dose is not where it needs to be. It needs to be at least 150 for her to like be able to stop using, which is what they kind of came to that conclusion. Lo and behold, I go into the hospital. So they arranged me to stay in an antepartum unit because the methadone clinic wasn't doing it. I went up to 150. My intake date I never used again. That's my sobriety date. It's the day I entered that hospital, and they put me right away on 150, which is like so weird and surreal, and then they put me up a little more just as like an insurance policy. And I am going to talk about dosages only because most people are like when they hear it and think, wow, like you're on too high of a dose, like you should not be on that dose. And my response to that is like, do I seem sedated at all? Because I'm not. It is going to make it harder to come off, but yeah. So my dose ended up being 185 for that pregnancy, which is very high. I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. This is a little bit harder to talk about. She did have some neonatal abstinence syndrome, which is why DCF got involved. She did need to be started on neonatal morphine because she had some withdrawal symptoms. Yes, they can happen from methadone. I attribute those to all of the other, and whatever that was mixed in that. So she did have some symptoms. I've heard stories of people saying, oh, the baby's fine, the baby's fine, the baby's fine, so they can get the baby out of the hospital so that DCF doesn't get involved. I was kind of the opposite, where I was like, the baby's not sleeping, the baby's crying, like, the baby has some diarrhea, like, over-exaggerating symptoms, because for me, seeing Whitney, my baby, in any sort of distress, just broke me. Like, absolutely broke me. So we exaggerated the symptoms, knowing that DCF was going to get involved.
You just wanted to really make sure she was okay.
Oh, I didn't. I've heard horror stories about people taking home shaking babies who scream for 3 weeks straight because they don't want DCF involved.
Yeah.
I didn't have anything to hide at that point, in my opinion. I'd done everything I could to get sober. My husband was sober at that point. We had a stable housing. We both had jobs. We had, a nursery that was painted and that I hand painted because I was sober for, 2.5 months before we delivered her. So I had needed projects, right? So I was on FMLA from work. I painted the walls. I painted clouds. I did calligraphy on the walls. Like, we had a beautiful nursery. We had all our clothes. Everything's organized. Beautiful home. So I was like, we're fine. Like, there's no way that they're going to try and take a kid from parents who, like, really care. Like, I expected testing. I expected there to be limits on, like, us having to go to maybe even IOP or something. But I did not expect them to try and go for removal. And I don't know in what world you can think a kid would be better off in foster care than with two parents that did everything in their power to get sober. I still to this day cannot reconcile in my head how that even happens. The social worker at the hospital had worked really closely with my husband and I from the first time I went in the hospital to get sober up until delivery. She'd been at that hospital for 32 years, and she came to court to testify on our behalf against DCF, and it was only the second time in 32 years that she'd ever done that for a family.
Wow.
My husband's family, my husband's dad's struggling right now pretty seriously with alcohol, so Ryan comes by it honestly, and they moved up proactively into our house so that DCF couldn't say that there wasn't supervision. They basically left their lives in Knoxville and came and lived with us. Both of our obstetricians testified on our behalf, and we almost still lost our child. So the way it works with DCF is they can do a up to 48-hour emergency removal, very, very low barrier to get that approved. So they got that approved. Thankfully, Whitney was in the hospital for that period still, so she wasn't in a foster home or something. The nurses had spent a lot of time with my husband and I. I was calling every 4 hours, checking on her. Wasn't allowed to see her, though. My husband wasn't allowed to see her. And it was the worst period of my entire life. And I turned to Ryan and I said, if we lose, which is, in hindsight, is a stupid attitude because it's just going to ruin her life for the rest of her life. But the pain was so big that I said, if we lose her, I'm going to kill myself. And I had an active plan of how I was going to do that, with multiple fail-safes. This was there was no oops, I didn't work. This was happening. We went to court, and thankfully the judge said, well, I'm not really comfortable removing her because the grandparents are here. They're doing testing. There's all of these safeguards. What's the logic for removing?
Yeah.
Their logic was they're both chronic relapsers, and chronic relapsers don't get better.
Oh, God.
So we didn't lose her, thankfully. My husband's parents were required to stay in the home. Then COVID hit. They went back home, which was great because it gave us our lives back a little bit, but it also extended this court thing for so long. It went on for a year and a half. Now, while I don't agree with removal, I think DCF involvement was probably one of the better things that ever happened to me because I was a chronic relapser, and it made damn sure that I wasn't going to relapse and get away with it, right? Because I had all my tests went right from the clinic.
There was accountability.
They went right from the clinic. They went to DCF. If I missed a dose, which I never did, DCF was going to find out. They were breathing down my neck, and that support and accountability really matters. My husband has struggled a little bit recently, kind of finding his identity. He's a stay-at-home dad, trying to figure out what he wants to do next. And I think he has that mentality that a lot of people have of oh, well, I have a house and I have cars in the garage and I have my kids and I have friends and I'm normal now. I can have a drink. Turns out not the case, not surprisingly. So he struggled a little bit with alcohol over the last year, more mental health, more depression. Alcohol has sort of, and I've never seen this in someone with chronic relapsing and low bottom alcoholism, where he sort of stayed the same. It's been a couple of beers here and there every couple months. Usually you have a drink and it's zoom off to the races.
The stories I usually hear.
Very unusual what's going on. It's more depression related. and escapism. And I think he's just too scared to lose the things that he has. And when this happened for the third time and I found out, put him on monitoring, which is really the same thing that worked with us with DCF, right? Like that accountability. So he's using a company called Accountable, which I love. And they breathalyze him twice a day. And it's been great. He has had no slips. And he's like kicking ass. And there's also some peer coaching in it, which I think he kind of needs to figure out what the next step is. And he doesn't need his wife. Like, what do you want to do? And like, you should do this. And like, it's none of my business. He needs to figure that out for himself. And I'm totally supportive of whatever he wants to do. He's so capable. He's brilliant, great at music, like really, really, really just likable. I can't say enough good things. So could do anything he wants. And it's more just figuring out what he wants to do, but he doesn't need me like badgering him on that. So, but that accountability is the same accountability that we had for DCF that worked so well is also in place again here.
Yeah.
So,
do you have fears with, I mean, you have like kind of a plan with getting off of methadone.
Yeah.
But like, do you have any fear with it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, like so much.
Yeah. And how are you kind of getting through that?
So the good part, that's a great question. So the good part is nobody's making me do this. I don't have to do it. So I'm doing it because I saw what it did to my teeth and my family needs me. My kids need me. I'd like to see my kids grow up and I don't know what it's doing internally to me, right? So from a medical perspective, I really want to make sure that I'm taking care of myself and I don't need to be on methadone at this point in my life. That said, I'm going down really slowly. And if I feel at any point a little wonky around it, we're just going to stop and we're going to wait a while.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of fears, and you can tell I have a lot of fears because I have a sponsor I'm working with and I'm starting to go to groups. And when I get to 100, I'm doing case management and testing. And when I get to 50, I'm using that ear device that sets it's like the Sparrow or the Ascent. Those are two versions of it. It minimizes opioid withdrawal symptoms. I'm using the one that's rechargeable. I don't remember the name of it. It's one of those two, to basically ensure that, the process is as smooth as possible. I have fear that it's going to suck and that I'm not going to be able to sleep. Sleep is like I work for a biometrics company. I know how important sleep is, right? Like sleep is the number one predictor of relapse. One of the biggest things for mental health and alleviating depression and anxiety is sleep. So my biggest fear is I'm not going to be able to sleep. And I don't want to get on another medication to sleep, to come off methadone. So if I didn't have the fears I have, I would not have this insane plan in place. And I hope I'm sitting here in 2 years being like, oh, it was like bringing a gun to a knife fight. I hope that it's way overkill. I'm even thinking of having a sober companion at the end of it because I've heard that getting from 5 to 0 is the hardest part. One of my fears is that it creeps up on me and then I get cravings, and it's kind of like I feel like there's a point of no return where you can always say no, but I feel like once you get to a point of craving, it's pretty hard to stop it. And I fear that I won't know that that's coming, but that's a little bit irrational because I have so many people around me that will see it coming from a mile away.
Yeah. You have a good support group.
Yeah. And I'm here all the
good.
time, and Robbie knows me super well. You see me, Jordana sees me, Nick works with me every day. My husband sees me. My husband knows I'm doing it. My husband was on methadone too, so alcohol is his drug of choice. But like I said, he was using with me. So when we first got pregnant, he wanted to encourage me to use methadone and get sober when it was first suggested. So he went up to I think 90, tapered for plateaued for 3 months, went right off, jumped off, fine. No problems. So I'm a big believer that it's in my head. A lot of the fears are in my head, and it can be as bad or as easy as I make it. And so staying out of my head is really important.
Yeah. And you seem very open and honest. So I feel
I'm the biggest believer in recovery is all about what are your intentions and are you being honest about stuff?
Yeah.
Because I see people do stuff in recovery that like maybe I wouldn't do, like take things or do things or whatever. And I'm like, are you like, if you're like, so my biggest issue, this is an example. My biggest issue with my husband when he drank was not his drinking. It was not that he drank. It was that he lied to me about it. That was my biggest issue with it. Because like you think that you can have a drink and think you're past that. Like, great, like let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Like let's talk about it. Like let's talk about your intentions, why you want to drink, why you think that. But if you're just going to go do it behind my back and lie about it, like that's a whole nother story.
I understand.
I see people take substances in recovery that are not technically like, I mean.
There's all these different things where it's like, oh, I don't consider you sober. It's honestly kind of an opinionated
or like
situation.
I have somebody who's big in 12-step and is a clinical director. I'm not going to say what program, but I know for a fact he's taking kratom. Like, bro, not in recovery. Like lying about it, sneaking it. Like,
he might be in recovery, but maybe not sober. Like, there's different things.
Yeah, fair. That is.
There's different things.
That's a great point and a fair distinction. A fair distinction, but
and then also you said like intention is important. I feel like somebody can have the best intentions, but also their actions are shit.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to. My intention was not to hurt you, but my actions ended up hurting.
But
you.
I ended up being like a complete asshole. Yeah. Well, like so, I'll give another example of it is like so. I had a friend who. This is really a friend. This isn't like my story, but it does involve dental, which is why I felt the need to clarify that. Who had some Percocet left over from. She's alcoholic, and been in recovery a long time. Had some Percocet left over from a back surgery. Was having some dental pain. So many people in recovery have these crazy dental stories. It's like, I know.
Yeah, I've heard of a few.
It's horrible. And so she was like, I'm in so much pain. I don't know what to do. And she called her sponsor and was like, I've tried everything. I've taken Motrin. I have an appointment to get this tooth removed. It's not for 3 days. Like, what do I do? What do I do? Can I take this Percocet? It was prescribed to me. I don't know what to do. Like, and her sponsor said no, and she did it anyway. And I'm like, dude, like you were like, and you told me about it. You told your sponsor. You told your husband. Like, it's kind of slippery slope there. Like, the intention was not to get high. The intention was to alleviate pain. Like, it's this is where I think being honest and being about recovery like really matters. And like, piecing together pieces of information and doing what's best for you. Like. In my opinion, like I can't tell her that she's not like that she broke it, like because it's just like I'm not God, I'm not her sponsor, I'm not in charge of her. Like,
yeah.
All I know is that you were honest about it, and I think honesty is like the number one thing in recovery, the number one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you
that's where it starts.
Up, like be honest about it. If you're really struggling, be honest about it. Like. If you feel the need to drink, be honest about it. Like, I'm such a big believer in that. So, like, in my opinion, like, did she relapse? I mean, I don't know. Probably not. I don't think so, but it's not up to me. Yeah. But, like, you know what I mean? I think it's all about honesty and intention. And, like, why are you doing the things you're doing? Are you taking it because you had a shitty day and you had a fight with your husband and you want to get high and escape? No. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So this happened recently, and I had like a big long debate with her about it. So I'm a little fired up about it still. But sorry.
One last thing I kind of wanted to touch on before we wrap up is Pretaa. I want to hear a little bit about it.
Okay.
What is it?
So Pretaa is a biometrics company. We basically are using kind of the mission is to use any existing hardware and technology out there to improve the lives of people with behavioral health concerns, including substance use disorder at all stages, everything from harm reduction to pre-contemplative, so like not sure whether they want to go to treatment, to during the episode of care, to post-discharge. Right now, where we're at with it is we're using Fitbits and Apple Watches. We work with treatment centers.
You guys are on Apple Watches?
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk to you after.
We'll get you on. You have an Apple Watch? We'll get you on.
I have a Fitbit and an Apple Watch.
Yeah, to get Nick to get you on.
Okay.
Easy peasy. that part's easy.
Okay.
So we basically baseline normal for every individual, and what we're looking for is anomalies. I mentioned sleep. Sleep, huge anomaly that is really indicative of people that are struggling. So there was a massive study that was done 2 to 3 years ago where it was a longitudinal study. It ended 2 to 3 years ago, and they analyzed the data, and they analyzed like over 1 million data points. Number one predictor of relapse was sleep. Number one predictor.
Really?
Disrupted sleep. Number two predictor, not in that study, but biometrically, of people struggling is heart rate variability. Relates to stress, relates to anxiety, basically is the body's inability to respond effectively to what's happening in their environment. Low relative heart rate variability correlates with relapse, with depression, and with anxiety. So again, low heart rate variability, not a great sign. When these types of things happen, or heart rate spike, for example, so we separate out exercise. Someone's sitting in group at IOP, heart rate spikes to 198 beats per minute. People in recovery are really good at masking, especially if they have trauma and they can dissociate. Can dissociate was the wrong way to put that. Are involuntarily dissociate. They made it sound like it was like some magic trick. Sorry. It was very insensitive language. If they have a history of dissociating, sometimes they'll look like completely flat, but their heart rate is like through the roof. And so they're very triggered by something. So all of this data we package up in a way that's really, really easy for clinicians to understand. We send it right into the electronic medical record system and to the clinicians so that they're able to better support those individuals and kind of understand where they are. We also do that for clients that are discharging. So some facilities will send clients out with the Fitbit, or if they have an Apple Watch, they'll just put the software on the client's Apple Watch. And right now, the way that alumni outcomes are done is with self-report. Facilities will call it, 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. And they'll say to the client, hey, how are you doing? Still sober? Clients that are doing well answer the phone and say they're doing well. Clients that are not doing well either don't answer the phone, so they don't count as a data point, or they do what I do and they lie and they say how great they're doing when they've just shut up. And their voice,
they do what I do.
And their voice is like, and they're like slurring their words. So, and the treatment center has to take their face value, even if they know that it's not true. They have to go by what they're saying. So that's how you get like the 99% success rates, because it's like, 99% of the people that answered the phone every time you called for a year straight said they were doing well. Great. What about the other 900 clients that went through your system and you never talked to again? So we're trying to actually get a good sense of like what those outcomes are, and more importantly, get to clients when they start to struggle. I am a big believer that substance use disorder does not occur in a vacuum, and I've never met somebody with addiction that doesn't have a mental health concern, or depression, anxiety, whatever.
Addiction
is, that addiction's like the symptom of that, right? So depression, anxiety precede the relapse. So if we can get to a client in the pre-relapse phase, we can save a life. I mean, the people that, it's the last survey on this, or last study I saw, was that 1 in 20 or 5% of clients discharging from residential programming will have a fatal overdose within the first 60 days. We want to prevent that. So we want to get to clients when they first start to have sleep disturbances, when they first start to isolate and hole up in their room and take 1,000 steps in a whole weekend because they're just going to the bathroom and back. When they're sleeping 16 hours because they're so depressed. That's when we want to get to clients. So we can then alert alumni teams, hey, this client needs help now. And they're able to reach out and get that client support and get them back into treatment or at the correct level of care or connected with the right person.
It's beautiful.
The next thing that's coming out in 6 weeks is a ring.
A ring.
Oh, it's
a ring?
Wild. I'll show you pictures after. It's a ring. Clients will get that. This is just for detox and residential clients. They'll get it. It measures all the same vitals, but it's measuring heart rate and not the same vitals, the same biometrics, but it's measuring heart rate and oxygen in real time. 24/7, 365. So everyone's biggest fear that owns a detox is I'm going to lose a client because a client's going to sneak something in an overdose, or they're going to make a suicide attempt, or they're going to have a stroke or a seizure or whatever it is. So we're measuring all of that and sending it to a big screen on the nurse's station. And it's constantly cycling through the clients. So if you have like 90 clients, it's going to cycle through them. But the clients that are in risky ranges are going to show up at the top in red or yellow.
Yeah.
So that the nurses are able to then say, oh my God, this client like needs help now. I'm going to go get to that client so that there's no more deaths in detox. There's no more seizures. There's no more strokes. There's no more like critical medical incidences because we're getting to all of it
the data
before it happens.
Yeah.
With data in real time, like that's fed in by the second. And not only does it say that that client is in a risk zone, it says where they are in the facility. So they're in the cafeteria. They're in bedroom 102.
Technology nowadays.
And within a couple of months, this is the really wild part, is we've heard from residential facilities that they spend so many operational hours chasing down, a client for a massage or for a one-on-one with a psychiatrist or for therapy, and they can't find the client, right? Because they're in the lounge or whatever.
Clients sneak out as well.
That happens. Or they're in bedrooms that they shouldn't be. I mean, I had slaw issues, so clearly I had slaw issues. I married my husband like 2 days after we got started talking again.
Of course.
Not married him. He moved up with me 2 days. We got married 2 months later.
Of course, that's how.
At City Hall, and our pictures are like a disaster because we were high. So those were not ones that we'll be showing the grandkids. But you can see the dots moving around. So you can see where the clients are, like literally moving as dots. So if you have a male and a female in a bedroom, or 2 females in a bedroom, and that's not the same bedroom, what are they doing? Yeah. Whatever it is, you can see all that. If a client takes the device off, you can see where they took it off.
Yeah.
So that if they take it off to have an attempt or try to get high or whatever it is,
you can go check on them,
get it right away.
Yeah.
So it basically Q checks will still happen because I don't think that there's things I think technology is great and can really, really, really help improve the level of care, but I don't think it just replaces everything. I think that
100%. Like my computer fails sometimes.
Right.
Shit happens.
But to be able to keep clients safe and prevent deaths, I think it's a massive step forward. Isn't it cool?
It's a great
and I'll
step
show you
in the right
ring. It's
direction.
Crazy. It's wild.
This is amazing, and you guys are doing great things.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate you sharing your experience with MAT and methadone, because I feel like that's something that's highly stigmatized and not talked about. And I've never had someone who's actively done it and for so long share their experience.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that.
Thank you. And we'll see where I am in a year, hopefully.
Yeah, we'll do a follow-up.
Hopefully at half the dose or less. We're going slowly. It's not worth blowing my life up over it. But I know people that have gotten off of it. And if nobody talks about it, nothing changes.
Yeah, exactly. So I really want to thank you. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.